Hello, everyone. Welcome to the talk. So, let's begin. We tend to think of people as us and them, but who decided who is whom? While all of us hear about different groups of people, there are some communities that don't get a lot of shine. Despite all the developments humans have made over the centuries, there are some sections of society who prefer to live with their older customs and traditions. India is home to about 400 indigenous tribes, and to tell you about them, here is our first speaker.
The 19th and 20th century was a dark period in human history. It was a time when indigenous people were taken from Africa and Asia to Europe and America and kept captive in displays that showed their primitive environment. This showed the cultural and physical differences among the tribes and the natives in the most humiliating way possible. It was a zoo of human beings, a human zoo. Something of this sort still happens with the tribes of the Andaman Island, but this time it happens with them on their own land. The small islands of Andaman are home to four tribes: the Great Andamanis, the Ongi, the Jarvas, and the Sentinelese. With time and human interference, the population of all these tribes drastically reduced. Only the Jaravas and the Sentinelese serve as an exception. The Sentinelese manage to survive because they live in an isolated island all by themselves and have consistently refused interactions with the outside world. They love their privacy so much that they have killed people who approached or landed on their island. It's the same feeling you have when you give your phone to your friend to look at a photo and they start swiping. Ugh, I hate the feeling. The Jaravas had a similar story, but because they live on the main island with other non indigenous people, it became difficult for them to keep to themselves. But before we get into that, let me tell you more about them. The Jaravas had been in the Andaman Islands for a long time. Some say that they have been there for over 2 millennia. They are believed to be descendants of the Jangil tribe that became extinct by the 1920s. The main reason this happened was because they didn't have the natural immunity to modern diseases like we do, and hence they couldn't cure themselves with the traditional medicines. When measles hit the island, the Jangils got wiped off. The only reason the Jarawas survived was because they were isolated. Of the 7.8 billion people of the world, 250 to 400 are a part of the beautiful Jarawa tribe, making it one of the largest tribes of the Andaman Island. This shows that even 400 people is a huge number for a tribe. The Jaravas are still at the primitive stage of life on Earth. Their way of life has remained almost completely unaltered since the Stone Age. The Jaravas of both sexes go around completely naked. They wear ornaments made with shells and palm leaves to enhance their beauty. They entirely depend upon the forest and sea for food. The way they hunt, prepare food, and live depends entirely on nature. But in recent times, it has become difficult for them to do so. It all began with the construction of the Great Andaman Trunk Road in the 1970s. It is a 360-kilometer long road that connects Port Blair in the south to the rest of the island. While doing so, it cuts through a small part of the Jarawa Reserve. The road was initially just meant for the purpose of trade, to bring goods from the capital to the smaller towns of the island. But soon it started being misused. Poachers started approaching the Jarawas. They gave them clothes, flashlights to use in the dark, mirrors to apply makeup, and many other things. And in return, they killed the animals of the forest. These were the same animals that served as food for the tribes. With food sources decreasing, the Jaravas were forced to kill the beautiful deer of the forest in order to survive. While we make nothing of this, it is a big deal to the tribe. Soon, tourist buses began traveling on the same road. It gave the tourists a chance to see the tribe with their own eyes. But they weren't just satisfied with that. They began to take pictures and videos even though it was strictly forbidden. Repulsive photos and videos began to appear on the internet. Some of them were taken by tourists, others by corrupt policemen. The striking similarity with humans is created an international outrage. Something had to be done. Indian authorities were forced to introduce several measures to stop this kind of disgraceful behavior. But as usual, no one followed them. If this continues, the Jarawas will be forced to join our society. While this might seem like a good idea for us, it definitely is not. The forest that they now inhabit will no longer be protected. Contractors will build complexes over the forest land. The Jarawas would find themselves in the capital city, uneducated, financially insecure, and exploited for their labor. So the Jarawas are losing their land, but sadly, they aren't the only ones. Let us see another tribe whose land is being encroached.
So, what does it mean to get up one day and find out that your way of life and that of your community is completely destroyed? Well, that was the situation the Bhils found themselves in. So, who are the Bhils? To answer this question, we will have to take a long walk from the palaces and forts of Rajasthan to the forests in the southern parts of the state where the tribe lives. Bhils are an Indo-Aryan speaking ethnic group in West India. As of 2013, Bhils were the largest tribal group in India. Some scholars argue that Bhil comes from the Dravidian word for bow and reflects the popularity of the bow and arrow as a weapon among these groups. The Bhils are mostly tribal in nature. In the past, they acquired a reputation for a fierce sense of independence. Isolated from the rest of the Indian society by their rugged environment, Bhil groups have managed to preserve many of their ancient tribal customs. Traditionally, they lived off the practice of shifting cultivation, hunting, and gathering in dense forests. Away from the facets of modern civilization, Bhils developed a rich, oral, animalistic culture with nature at its center. They aim for self-sustenance while also protecting the environment. Although their reputation for banditry and lawlessness has been exaggerated, the unruly Bhils did pose problems for local rulers. The British government in India, which gained control of the region in the early 19th century, even set up special military units to pacify the local Bhil populations. Today, the Bhil remain a disadvantaged community with high levels of poverty, illiteracy, and other social problems. On the other hand, even though they are not as privileged and as progressive as us, there is still a lot of freedom given to Bhil women. And women are treated as equals by the Bhil society. Tribal women smoke hookah and consume liquor openly with men, and such activities are not looked down upon. Furthermore, the Bhil woman is allowed to remarry after her first marriage. The central Bhil are usually shy and love their independence. Festivals, dance, drama, and music are a large part of their culture. The length and enthusiasm for these events is usually directly proportional to the amount of alcohol that is consumed. So, what disrupted their seemingly perfect way of life? Fast forward to 2017. Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the controversial Sardar Sarovar Dam on River Narmada, the second largest dam in the world, touted by the PM as an engineering miracle. It was expected to provide water to 9,000 villages and generate power for three states. But it has also displaced thousands of people since the 1980s, and more recently, the Bhils. Hence, the Bhils demanded for a separate state. They want the migrant people of the community to be brought back to their original place with full dignity. These people also demand that the tribal community should have first right on natural resources. Presently, the hopes for their own separate state are looking rather grim. They suffer from intense deprivation, unable to live in harmony with nature as they did in the past, yet ill equipped for daily survival in a modern economy. They are now forced to migrate to cities to find work as unskilled labor and earn meager incomes. The natural paradise is lost to these erstwhile children of the forest.
The Warlis are an indigenous tribe based in the northern outskirts of Mumbai, known for their art, nomadic lifestyle, and customs. The origins of Warli art are dated back to thousands of years, but they became publicly noticeable since the late 1970s. Let us consider a painting. We can see that there are pictures of worldly men and animals, a part of regular worldly culture. Some paintings are also featuring feminist tones, sorry, which is explained when you realize that it is women who are mainly engaged in the making of these paintings, as the skill is passed from mother to child. Their art is tied to their culture as it binds their community together. Paintings are also made every year after harvest and are compulsory to be made by the bride before the wedding. Not a single wedding has taken place without such a painting made. Worldly paintings are made on a base with a shade of red, with the red, uh, with the white colored rice paste as paint. Originally, Warli paintings do not use any colors and are always painted solely with white. Its commercial reproduction, however, is distorting the actual style of drawing. Today, most of the worldly women do not have any exposure to the market and do not earn for their creations. Meanwhile, altered versions of worldly art are sold for heavy profits commercially. While painting has been a form of while painting has been an activity of their social interest, it is now becoming a form of escapism to get away from the woes of the harm that the modern world is causing to them. Their immense love for nature is being overshadowed by the selfish interest of others. Many make fake promises to them and then do not compensate them for their efforts. Instead, they convert their natural and traditional houses into modern cemented ones. It is also adding to the loss of culture and traditions. However, there are many more cultures that are being lost.
The Khasi tribe is a major tribe of the state of Meghalaya. They take up around 48% of the state and are also present in parts of Assam and Bangladesh. Their mythology is an interesting case. Do you remember those old Tom and Jerry episodes? Well, of course you would. Tom and Jerry is immortal. But you know those old episodes where Tom used to die all the time and then he used to, go on an heavenly escalator to, heaven, and then he used to meet God and stuff and all that. Well, that is what their belief is. They believe that God created 16 families of humans. On top of a sacred mountain, God placed a heavenly ladder which allowed humans to travel from earth to heaven as frequently and as freely as they wanted. One day, they were tricked into cutting down a divine tree on top of Lamdengi Peak, upon which the ladder was withdrawn. After that, seven families were stuck on earth and nine were in heaven. Those seven families continued to form what we know today as the humans. As a tribe, their characteristics aren't very impressive. They follow a patriarchal societal structure, but the inheritance is matrilineal. Matrilineal means that the descent is traced through the mother. Also, all the ancestral property goes to the daughter of the family, the first claimant being the youngest. Now, you may be wondering as to why I'm talking about a tribe which has a huge population, common societal structure, and diet when this talk is clearly supposed to be about the uncommon and different tribes of India. The answer is because I wanted to lay a background for one particular village of the Khasi tribe. This village is Kongthong. It's a tiny blip deep in the mountains near Shillong, a population of just 600 people. What makes this village unique isn't its food or where it is situated. It is the naming system of the people. Every villager has two names, one in their mother tongue and other is a particular tune or a whistle. During a mother's pregnancy, she starts composing of a tune. A lot of times it's a mixture of two or three birds' calls, but is totally the mother's decision. After the birth of the child, all the villagers and the family members whistle that tune around the child, making it recognize and memorize it. The tune is usually a minute long and serves as a lullaby, but the title, which is 5 or 6 seconds long, becomes the unofficial name of the child. So awesome it could be, right? I mean, think about all the times your name has been misspelled when you could have just responded to something like awesome. Anyway, over generations, this whistling has been integrated in their daily lives. Every full moon night, a huge bonfire is lit, and every unmarried young man sings his naming tune to the best of his capacity. The best singer is usually chosen by the prettiest single lady in the village. Talk about getting the flirt on. Anyway, when a hunting party goes out, they use these as call signs, since the whistles travel better in the wild than words do. If a person is confronted by gangsters or wild animals, all they have to do is whistle their own name loudly, and the nearest search party will come looking for them. The history of this tradition has not been traced back to its source, but the observation and incorporation of the environment around them is something unique. The story of this village is not a sad one. Due to increasing social activities and better communication, this village is able to showcase their uniqueness to the world while staying adamantly stuck to their own cultures and accept other cultures and languages too.
Adivasis are some of the most discriminated people in our country. They are ridiculed for their way of life, called primitive, barbaric, or just considered to be all out weird. When we hear about these indigenous people, you're made to think about ancient times, the sort of backward people that have been here for a really long time, but haven't really developed as such. But that's not entirely true. Some scheduled tribes have much more recent histories. The Siddhi people, for example, are believed to have migrated into India from Africa in just the last few centuries. And yet they too are considered to be a scheduled tribe. And this is something that begs the question of what it means to be indigenous. Our ethnic groups, including the many indigenous people that form our population, have varying origins. Be it the Indo-Aryans or Dravidians, Sino-Tibetans or Austronesians, or whatever other group there is, the fact of the matter is that every person that lives in India today had ancestors that were once outsiders to this very land. See, though, that's the thing. People aren't simply defined by where they come from and what they once were. Instead, it's what they've become that counts. For example, languages like Bengali or Marathi may have had linguistic ancestry to some distant, far off land, but its many traditions, customs, and literature, it all grew into its present form right here in India. In a sense, it was adaptation to local circumstances that made them native to the country. So, wait, then what makes indigenous people different from any other ethnic group in the country? Well, they take to lead extremely specific way of lives that are optimized with their surroundings. In contrast, general society follows a broad, global approach to life. For us, economic growth is imperative. We always find new things to create, to buy, and to sell, and our overall human consumption is ever increasing. But these tribes take only what they need, following a simple life that's one with their ecosystems rather than being a disruption to it. Let me give you a few examples. while tribes in arid regions work to minimize their water consumption and follow age old water conservation techniques, general society thinks it's all right to have water hungry lawns or have swimming pools in desert cities like Las Vegas or Dubai, no matter how bad the water scarcity is. While we build bridges and structures out of cut trees or concrete or steel, some tribes, like the earlier mentioned Khasi tribe, influence nature to build it for them. They build trees, they build bridges out of living trees and its roots. And this extends even to food that we eat. We don't care whether the crops we grow are bad for our soil or if we're causing desertification through overgrazing because our sheep and our cows just eat too much grass. Tribes, on the other hand, eat food that is native to the land and at a minimal cost for the ecosystem. Different regions are unique in their conditions and resources. While modern society deems it fit to replicate the same kind of life everywhere, tribals work to build a more intimate connection with their land. Adivasi is a Sanskrit term for original people, and this can be seen with an entirely new meaning. Adivasis have some originality in the way they lead life. In our race for development, we are encroaching into lands that are traditionally occupied by a tribal population. With every roadway, mine, dam, or metal foundry that we build, our projects are destroying ecosystems and livelihoods of the tribal people along with it. This exposes the hypocrisy of our goals. We yearn for sustainable development by simply cushioning the symptoms of our unsustainable growth. Yet we ridicule the same people that live sustainable lives in the first place. So while we stay seated high on our moral pedestals, discussing matters of development and primitivity, is it us who are civilized by chasing infinite growth and destroying our ecosystems? Are we really the civilized ones? Or is it the people who live in symbiosis with their ecosystems, leading a truly non-inclusive way of life that hurts no one? They say that ignorance is bliss. With all the things that we have in our world today, changing our way of life to become in tune with our surroundings might just be impossible. The least that we can do is not intrude into the lives of our indigenous people. After all, they are far better at protecting our nature and its ecosystems than we ever will be. We need better laws and better enforcement to protect them. And moreover, we need to fight against the prejudices and the systematic shortcomings that discriminate against them. In the meantime, indigenous people can help us redefine our concepts of development into something more local and civic conscious. After all, modern problems require unique solutions. We hope that you learned something new with this talk, or have at least taken it as some food for thought. Thank you for being with us here this evening, and see you next time.